Hi, welcome to Homeschool University, where life meets learning. I'm Diana Applegate, and today I have tips for you on teaching elementary science in your homeschool, right? This is like grades K through 5 or 6. I am super excited to bring you this video because science is my thing. I love science. I have a science degree. I got excited about science really in about 7th grade because I had this teacher who just lit a fire in my soul for science. And ever since then, this has really been a big deal for me, helping people teach science in their homeschool. So teaching science can be a bit confusing and intimidating, right? I mean, you don't really have a good roadmap like you do in some other subjects. I like to call this little area called AOSI. That's right, Areas of Science Intimidation. Things like, do we use a textbook or do we not use a textbook? How about, do we need daily lessons or weekly lessons, monthly? Do I teach all of my children at the same time, the same lesson? Or do I need to have individual science lessons for each child at their own level? How about, what subjects do we study exactly, and what kind of materials do we use? Well, no worries. I have got you covered on this one. Today, we're going to start out by talking about the Charlotte Mason approach and how that applies to studying science, particularly in the elementary years. I love Charlotte Mason. She totally transformed the way that I look at teaching in general, but especially teaching science. And then following that, we're going to have product reviews. Yay! And we're going to dive into some of my favorite products for that whole teaching science in the homeschool elementary years. So let's get started. So we're going to start out talking about Charlotte Mason. Some of you may know who she is, but for those of you who don't, she was a British educator. She was born in 1842. She died in 1923. She started out as a teacher herself in her younger days. She went on to do a whole bunch of wonderful things. She founded something called the Parents Educational Union, which was all about equipping parents to teach their children, particularly their young children, at home. Now, why was this important to Charlotte Mason? Because in the late 1800s in Britain, to go to school, you had to pay. There were very few free schools, and in many rural areas, school was very limited. There were only a few schools. They didn't necessarily teach all grades. So parents had to be resourceful, and she wanted to equip them. At this time, she wrote a series of books called Home Education, which is still in print today. I highly recommend that you read it. You can check out Amazon, I think probably has it, but certainly Alibris Books, Abe Brooks, you can buy it used. Definitely worth reading. But anyway, she went on later then to establish a training school for governesses and others that were teaching children directly. That's a little about Charlotte Mason, kind of gives you her background. What then is the Charlotte Mason approach to education? Well, that involves a quote from Charlotte Mason herself, which I'm going to read to you here. Of all the joyous motives of school life, the love of knowledge is the only abiding one, the only one which determines the scale, so to speak, upon which the person will hereafter live. So what she's saying there is that the point of education is teaching your child to value learning and to love learning and to know how to learn. That's powerful. And that really is, if you think about it, what we do in our homeschools every day. Because we have that one-on-one tutoring with our children, the Charlotte Mason approach is perfect. It gives us that opportunity to not only give information to our children, but to get them excited about the information, to present it in a way that they totally understand it, and then to equip them to go out and find out more if that's what they want to do in the scope of their lives. And then we're going to take this one step farther in your homeschool in particular when it applies to science, especially elementary science. Wow, listen to this quote. The child who learns his science from a textbook, then we go to nature for illustrations, and he who gets his information from object lessons has no chance of forming relations with things as they are, because his kindly, obtrusive teacher makes him believe that to know about things is the same as knowing them personally. So think about that one for a minute here. She's saying, yeah, you can hand the child a textbook, or you can do a lesson for them that shows them that something is so. But unless they go out and experience it for themselves when it comes to science, they're not going to form the connections. They're not really going to understand it. And chances are they won't actually be learning it, retaining it. So Charlotte Mason, in her view of science, as you could tell from that last quote, put an awful lot of emphasis on nature study. That was super important to her, particularly in the elementary years. And I totally believe her. I totally agree with her. Because think about this, nature study is really tailor-made for a child's curious mind. And children from this age group, yeah, they are curious. Have you ever been pestered by your child? Why is that? How does it work? You know, all those questions. Those are the questions that come out of a curiosity. So instead of working against that, nature study works right into that and makes the best use of it. There's a little side benefit to nature study, and there's some skills that it teaches that you probably won't get anywhere else. How about the power of observation? That's right. Your child looks out the window and says, hey, there's a bird outside. What's it doing, right? Okay, then that leads them into the next phase, which would be concentration and focus. They have to pay attention to the bird to know what it's doing. Oh, look, it's bringing in some pieces of twine. What's it doing with that? Oh, it looks like it's making a nest out of it. They've had to focus on it. And the last thing that I really think that nature study can enhance in your child's arsenal of skills would be patience. In nature, things happen as they are going to happen, the way that God intended, and no faster and no slower. So suppose that your child is watching that bird outside. Well, now, if you know they're making a nest, perhaps you're going to watch over several weeks to find out, do the babies come and what happens to the baby birds and how does that all work? So you have observation and focus and patience. Wow. Aren't those skills that we all need as adults? Yeah, absolutely. So you now know the philosophy that we're going to approach this science study with. So now let's get into the practical side of making Charlotte Mason work in your homeschool. So now we're moving into the practical applications of teaching science, as in, what is it that you're going to teach, right? Well, let's start with my personal favorite, the nature walk. That's right. In our household, my kids for many years thought that field trip and nature walk were synonymous, the same thing, because we did it so often. I used to love taking my kids out once a week for a nature walk. Nature walk is fabulous because it allows your children to really observe what's going on and find the things that interest them, and then to get information about them. We'll talk more about this in a little bit when I get into some resources to help you. But suffice it to say, one of the best ways to do a nature walk would be to have a particular walk, a path that you take on a regular basis, so that you can compare changes in the scenery, in the animals that are present, and it gives your children kind of that connection to make between the fact that, yes, things are here, but yes, they are also changing. So you got the nature walk. How about this one? Growing and or keeping living things. Yes, this can be growing plants. Even if you live in an apartment, you can put boxes outside on a patio to grow, or even indoors. And then there was the keeping living things. Oh, that just gives me the shudders. That would be keeping bugs and things like that. Okay, not my deal, not at all. But did I mention I had 3 boys? So there was a lot of that. And the rule was kind of, if it gets loose, don't tell mom. That is kind of it. So this brings me to collecting something else, a natural collection of an inanimate object, like rocks or plants or leaves. I used to love collecting rocks, and in fact, we still have jars of rocks all around our house that we've collected from places that then put some water in the jar, and the rocks look really pretty and sparkly. We did that. You can have your child identifying the rocks, putting them out on poster board. Wow. But even pressing flowers, it's just collecting natural things and identifying them and really being able to examine them. So here's another another object for your lessons. How about simple science experiments? I'll give you some resources for this, but you can do science experiments using only household items and get some really spectacular results. I'm not saying anything's going to be exploding, but there could be fizzies. Oh, yes. Speaking of things exploding, here's another one. How about model rockets? Okay, this is a really fun one. There are lots of kits online for this. You do have to have an area to do it in, like either a really big empty parking lot or maybe a field of some sort where there isn't anything growing that's important, because rockets, they do go up and eventually they do come down, but it's quite a distance quite often. But model rockets, a lot of fun, great way to learn some physics there. Here's another one. How about animal training? Want to know everything you can about the nature of animals? Try training a few. That's right. I'm thinking cats here, right? Learning about the independent nature of wild animals. Cats would have you covered. You can train dogs. Hey, we even did a few, we attempted to do a few training bits on the hamsters. So animal training, that's a fun one. Oh, here's one for you that a lot of kids really enjoy, astronomy. I mean, it's so cool. You're going out at night and you're trying to get away from the lights. Maybe you even drive to some place, if you live in the city, a little bit out of city, where the lights are gone so you can see the sky better. You're identifying constellations, watching how they change over the seasons or even over the days. Your child can learn to identify the phases of the moon. You may have, you get an inexpensive telescope, but you can even do this with binoculars. Wow, a lot of fun on that one. Here's a personal favorite of mine, just because I got into this as a kid, a weather diary. Keeping track of what the weather is from day to day, the temperature. You can get apps on your phone now that give you wind speed and all that stuff. So you can note that stuff down, and then that could even lead to something even cooler, which is weather prediction based on the clouds outside. That's right. How cool is that? Grandma and Grandpa, I know that it's going to rain tomorrow because those clouds outside are cumulus nimbus and they tell us, right? That's awesome. What a great skill to have. And the last topic I'm going to give you in this section, the practical side, before we get into actual resources to help you with this stuff, would be living books. A living book is one that uses a narrative style, kind of like telling a story to talk about something. Usborne books are really great for this, if you've ever seen an Usborne book, and I'll show you a few. But it's that idea that you've got lots of pictures, but you're also telling in a very narrative way about whatever it is that you're looking at. It's not just a series of bullet points of facts, but it's an actual story about it. So there are some ideas for you. Now, let's get into the resources and the tools you're going to use to teach those things. So when talking about teaching nature study and how to do collections, I cannot recommend this book highly enough. This is Handbook of Nature Study by Anna Botsford Comstock. It's an older book. It is a wonderful book. Seriously, if this is the only thing you have on your science shelf, you are in good shape. Let's take a look first at what's in this book. We have the contents here. She starts out with the teaching of nature study, which is very thorough. She's got wonderful information in here. Goes on to animals, plants. She even has earth and sky, talking about things like the soil and rocks, the skies, including clouds, that sort of thing. She's just so thorough in this. So let's look at an actual section in this, an actual lesson. Let's look at the robin. She starts out with kind of a narrative about the robin, about what his habits are, the things that he does, that sort of thing, information generally, but told in a very story-like way. Next, she brings you to the lesson itself. You have a leading thought here to understand all we can about the life and the ways of the robin. And then she's got a method that you're going to follow, kind of giving you some hints on teaching in this. And then, this is the best part, observations by pupils, questions that you can ask your children to answer, and that's going to help them really observe this. Things like, what is the color of the beak? What note does a robin give when it sees a cat? Do robins eat other food than earthworms? Wow, this is fabulous stuff here. And she just got page after page of this. I mean, this is not a skinny little book. This is a serious volume here. Luckily for you, it is not expensive and it is worth every penny. The way I would use this with my children, we would either use it before we went out on a nature hike. If we knew there were certain things that we were going to see, we would read about them ahead of time and write down some questions to answer. Or possibly we would see something while we were out on our hike and then come back and learn about it and try to answer the questions. So can't recommend this one enough. This is fabulous. The next thing I want to bring you in this category would be field guides. Yes, field guides are invaluable. This is how you find out about the things that you see and how you identify them. Like this, these Peterson first guides are great. They're very simple. They have great pictures and then just a little short description about the flower itself. And notice, this is cool. They color code them. So you have blue flowers, pink flowers, yellow flowers. How cool is that? Caterpillars. My goodness, did we use this one a lot, because every fall we get caterpillars, and every fall my kids say, what kind of caterpillar is that? And mom has to go, wait, I'll get the book. This is a great one because it doesn't just give you the caterpillar, but what the caterpillar turns into and even what the pupa looks like. These are a lot of fun. Audubon books, I just cannot recommend these highly enough. Full color, beautiful pictures. You can identify any bird, or I've got one also on trees and another one on wildflowers, I think. In the back gives you description and information about each one, including their call, where you would normally find them. We had a lot of fun with this because we would determine, hey, is that bird off the beaten path? Is it in a place where we wouldn't expect to see it? Today, lucky for you, you don't even have to take these guides in your backpack when you go for a nature walk. Oh no, you can now get apps on your phone that are field guides. Just saying, just don't go on a hike without something, because otherwise you're going to run into things and go, what was that? And no one knows. How about talking about collections now? This is a fun book, Pet Bugs. No, I don't like keeping bugs, but my children certainly did. And if you're going to keep them, you might as well know something about them and then also be able to keep them safely and happily, right? So how about, she's got a section on all kinds of keepables in here, but ladybugs. Everybody has ladybugs, what they look like, where to find them, how to catch them, and the best part, how to keep them. In other words, how to keep them alive, hello, and then what they act like. You can actually take out of this section of it, you could actually ask some questions. What do you see it doing, right? A lot of fun, very, very helpful. Another guide in this category of nature study would be these TOPS books. I love these. These are actually for classroom use, but they're structured activities that have to do with growing something. There are activities in here where your child is actually making a notebook using copies of some of the pages in here, but then also making their own drawings and their own observations. And this takes them all the way through the growth cycle of the plant in a guided way. These are just fabulous because often as you're growing something, kids aren't really aware of what's happening, this will actually provide all of that information and more. Our next area of science study that I have some resources for would be astronomy. And this book right here, I cannot recommend highly enough. This is The Stars by H.A. Rey. If you have ever read Curious George books, you have read H.A. Rey. Turns out he was very interested in the stars and in the sky. He starts out here, let's go back here. He starts out, he's got shapes in the sky, meet the constellations, stars through the year, and some whys and hows. In this first section, he's just giving kind of an overview of the kind of things that you need to study the stars, but also just some general information about how to see them. He gives you things like these charming illustrations. It's really fun. Then he goes on to talk about the constellations themselves, giving you ways to identify them and how they are actually arranged in the sky with their neighbors. Then he even goes on, this is really the huge bonus, he gives you stars through the year. This actually has constellation charts in it, which helps you to spot the stars regardless of where you live in the world and what the time of year is. These are fabulous, just saying. This book is just a ton of fun. Get outside with binoculars or an inexpensive telescope and you will open a whole new world for your kids. And on this topic, this is a great book. This is called The Grand Tour, okay? This is a book that was published in the 1980s that I actually bought when I was in college. Yes, I'm that old. It actually walks through the planets in our solar system, but it doesn't just walk through them. It gives you actual pictures from the Voyager missions, if you remember those. You've heard of them. And then it also gives you these artist renderings of what it would look like if we were really there. Wow. I don't care how much technology changes. An artist rendering is always wonderful. And frankly, we're still using images from the Voyager missions. So don't think that this book is outdated. What a way to really bring the planets to life for your kids and make it more than just something we see in the sky. Gives great information on top of that, just really interesting descriptions. Can't recommend it enough. I love astronomy. This is a great way to complement it. Now we're going to move into something really interesting, which is taking a look at the clouds in the sky for that weather diary and learning how to predict weather based on the clouds. These charts are available in several different iterations. If you go on the internet and start typing in things like, find me a cloud chart, Google. But these have actual pictures of the different cloud formations and then the name of the cloud formation and what it means. So like this one here, this is altocumulus undulatus. Precipitation likely within 15 to 20 hours if the wind is steady northeast to south. Other winds bring an overcast sky. Mostly threatens precipitation. Wow, is that cool or what? Your child can become a weather forecaster based on cloud patterns. Can't recommend this one enough. Hang it up on your wall. This is going to be fun. Okay, I've got some resources now that will help you with simple science experiments in your home. We already looked at something from TOPS when we were talking about growing plants, right? But this one actually is one of many they have that has nothing to do with growing things, but rather with finding things out about science. This one, electricity. This is a lot of fun. This actually has your child constructing things that will create electricity using things that you can find at the hardware store and many things you may have around your house. And then it really teaches your child a little electricity theory, a little electrical theory on top of actually constructing something. This is just, oh my gosh, these are so much fun. I cannot recommend them highly enough. What a great way to do some science experimenting in your home. Different take on that would be this, Science in Seconds for Kids. This is another really fun book. Notice it's experiments you can do in 10 minutes or less using common household items. There are lots of books that are like this. You just have to kind of search them out. You can go to your local bookstore and you will find some in the children's area, trust me. Talking about things like How can you change the center of gravity of an object, okay? Or how about how do you determine the relative age of a snail, okay? That's going in a different direction, right? How can magnets be harmful? Does a compass always give the correct direction? These are just fun things to look at to determine how things work. It gives you materials, a simple procedure, and then an explanation of what happened and why, right? I say there are lots of different iterations of this sort of book, but these are the way to go for science with your kids. Don't try and make this complicated. Make it fun, right? This brings me to my last category of suggestions of resources to use. And this one is living books. So we're going to start out looking at a couple of Usborne books. I know I mentioned those previously. These are a lot of fun. This one, Living World Encyclopedia, is no exception. This has got basically information about a variety of natural topics, right? And then it's got all these illustrations to go with them. The cool thing about this is that these are not just a collection of facts. Yes, there are lots of facts in here, but it's way more than that. And your child is really going to learn from this. My kids just ate these books up. No kidding. So this is one Usborne book that I would recommend. Here's another, Mysteries and Marvels of Nature. This is a really fun one. This is talking about, like here we have things like attack, fight, or bluff. Yes, and what kind of things would come out of that? Magical changes that happened in the animal world. And I love these. They'll stick these in here, true or falses. I just love those. Those are fun. All kinds of just information with these great pictures. Again, that's what Usborne books are really famous for. So another book in this category would be this one, More Fun with Nature. This is called a take-along guide, which means you could take it out into the field with you on that nature hike as you find things to tell you about them. This one has, as you can see, it's got animals, it's got birds in there. You have information about trees, how to identify them, what they look like. Really, it's got, I'll give you the categories that it got here. We've got berries, nuts, and seeds, rocks, fossils, and arrowheads, seashells, crabs, and sea stars, birds' nest and eggs, and wildflowers, blooms, and blossoms. Wow. And very similar to the Usborne idea, it's got good pictures, it's got a lot of information. I say my kids just so enjoyed these books, and I know many other children through the years that I've shared this with have felt the same. So that brings me to a slightly different kind of book, but still falling into this category. The Way Things Work. This one happens to be the New Way Things Work. This is like the I Ching of boys' books. I'm not kidding. Yes, girls like it too, not saying they don't, but for a boy who wants to know how things work, yeah, this is it. This is full of not just information and great information, but humor as well. This would be the mammoth, the woolly mammoth. You will find the woolly mammoth doing things scattered throughout this book. But this is all about how do things work. If you come, we'll swoop back in here. The printing press. Ever wanted to know how that works? There you go. Batteries. I mean, his illustrations are fabulous. The information he gives is told in a very narrative way. And then there's the fun. There is always the woolly mammoth to add a little humor to the situation. This is a fabulous book. You will not be able to rip this out of the hands of your child. I can guarantee it. They will be fascinated. Last choice that I just have for my shelves to give you kind of an idea of what to look for is this one, Questions and Answers About the Natural World. My husband's brother gave this to our youngest son when he was, I'm going to say about 6. He could not put this book down. He would not put this book down. This has got information about everything you ever wanted to know in the natural world, pretty much, in the form of an answered question. So like this, how do Antarctic birds go fishing? It's going to tell you. Or we get up here into, jungle animals, things like What is a bushmaster? Yeah, like I ever want to find that out, but that's just me. How tall is a gorilla and things about them? This is really answering the questions that if your child had the animal in front of them and could ask questions, they would ask these. And it answers them all, again, in a very narrative way. As you can see, these are not textbooks, not any of them. These are fun books. These are books that your child will pull off the shelf, not because it's science time, but because they want to read them. How fun is that? So that's it for today. If I could give you one last thought to take away from this on teaching a homeschool science in the elementary years, it would be this: keep it simple and keep it fun. Seriously. There's a quote that I've kind of made a twist in that I've used for many years when I talk to people about this. It's from a guy named Leif Babin, who co-wrote a book that, by the way, I highly recommend in the high school years for reading. You're going to find that in my teaching series on high school for curriculum choices. But anyway, the quote that he made was that complexity breeds disaster and chaos. My take on that is complexity breeds dissension and chaos. If you want your children to love science, don't turn it into a complex, boring textbook festival, okay? That's the surest way to turn your kids off of science. Hey, I got turned on to science dissecting frogs, believe it or not. Yep. So make it into something fun. And I'll tell you what, if you want to avoid chaos in teaching science, when you go out for that nature walk, don't take a written itinerary with you, because all that's going to happen is your kids are going to end up just standing there waiting for you to direct them on what they should be looking at next. No, keep it simple, keep it fun. Let your kids enjoy science, and you and they will look forward to it. So thanks for watching this week. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, hey, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, because frankly, that's how YouTube knows that this video is worth watching, and they will not bury it under 1,000 other videos, right? Meet me here next Wednesday for my next video, which will be the value of reading aloud in your homeschool. And I'm not talking just reading aloud to non-readers. I'm talking about reading aloud all the way through the high school years. You do not want to miss that one. So the last thing I want to leave you with would be the 3 key strategies that we have here at Homeschool University. The first is to be practical. Hey, common sense is a free gift. Anybody can make use of it. Be purposeful. Pray with and for your children and for your homeschool. And be positive. You can do this because you are amazing.
Hey now, take a step outside and seize the day.